Hello, welcome back to Iggy's Toy Parade and Soldier Review. This is your host, Iggy. Yay. Thank you for that. Guys, it's been a while since I've posted a video for you. I was planning to postpone this one until I could find some more of my reference materials, but I couldn't find them. I don't know what's happened to my books about the French and Indian War, and I couldn't even find my flashlight. I think it may have rolled under the bed, but my knees hurt so bad I can't bend down to look for it. Anyway, uh, I'm just going to have to do this, shoot from the hip and go by my memory, which of course I'm like a gangster on the in the docket. Uh, I I don't remember that, or I take the fifth, or whatever. Anyway, Iggy, just get on with the story. I don't know why you postpone things with these stupid anecdotes of yours. Sorry about that. Um, so, what do we have here? Well, today we're looking at Armies in Plastic, Austrian troops from the 7 Years' War. Now, the 7 Years' War, of course, is the same as the French and Indian War. In America, it's called the French and Indian War, and over in Europe, of course, it's known as the 7 Years' War. So, the French and Indian War was fought between the British and colonists against the French and their Algonquin and, what was the other one? The Ojibwe uh, Native Americans. And it was for control of the Ohio River Valley. And hostilities began in 1754 when Washington and his men surprised some French and killed a very popular French officer. What seemed almost like a murder, I guess, from what I was, if my memory serves me right. And the French retaliated, of course, and uh, Washington built a hasty fort. And when I say a fort, that's really almost an exaggeration. I went there in person. It's called Fort Necessity. And basically, it looks like a shack with a fence around it. And then there's some logs that were cut down and put out in the front to act as a sort of a rampart. But what the Americans didn't realize, or the British in this case, was that they were in a valley, but it was sort of a depression in the valley. So the higher ground was along the forest line, and the French came with their Indian allies and started taking pot shots at the defenders, and was creating a lot of casualties for the defenders. So they ended up surrendering. So Washington's, he was a colonel at that time in the American, I guess they were a militia. I don't know what they would call them back then. Um, his first battle was not very auspicious for him, since he ended up surrendering. Now, the French had the upper hand for about 5 years. They pretty much had it their way. The British suffered a lot of defeats at the hands of the. How can you suffer a defeat at the hands? The defeat of the hand. Never mind. But in 17, what was it? Iggy's memory gears are turning. I believe it was in September of 1759 when General Wolfe had his troops climb the cliffs outside of Quebec, and on the plains of Abraham, they assembled, and the French. I don't know why the French did this. It was kind of stupid, I think, but they left their defensive positions to join in battle with the British, and they didn't need to do that. So that, I guess, I don't know why they did that. I wasn't there, but I'm old enough. I could have been there. Anyway, uh, the what was his name? Uh, Louis Joseph Montcalm de Montcalm. He was the Marquis de Montcalm Varan. I'm guessing. I wish I had my books. I only have one book, and it hard. You know what? It says French and Indian War, and it says nothing about the fighting in Europe. The Prussians were fighting the Austrians, and the French and the Prussians were allied with the British. And somehow Frederick the Great, this is why I guess he's named the Great, was managed to pull victory out of what looked like a sure defeat for him. And he defeated them, the Austrians and the French. Anyway, these troops are Austrians. However, they look like they could substitute for French. And I'm not going to bore you with more storytelling because I'm probably getting the details wrong. My memory's not that strong anymore. So why don't we dive in and look at the soldiers, and why does Iggy want to use these for French? Well, in the book that I did find in my stack is this one here, and it shows the French after they had a fantastic victory at Fort what was it called? What was it called? Fort Carillon. Carillon. And the British kept attacking and attacking and getting mowed down by the French, who had a very good defensive position. And the British finally gave up because they were getting pretty badly mangled by the French. But you see here they have a white uniform, and these by Armies in Plastic are Austrians. But you'll note some interesting things with them is that if you look at this guy, he's got the long ponytail with the black ribbon tying it. Ooh, sorry about that. And if you look at this guy, can you see that? It's blurry, isn't it? I dropped my phone on the pavement and I cracked it and it's loose. I think that shows his ponytail. Unfortunately, I need a new phone. This is one of my favorite poses, by the way, the drummer. It's a pretty cool looking figure, and he's got all his accoutrements. Why is that not focusing, guys? My glasses are steamy because the air conditioning doesn't work here, so it's like 100 degrees inside my room here. So my glasses keep steaming up. But it's a pretty fine pose. And I'm going to use these to double as French infantry. But Iggy did make a mistake. These are 60 millimeter, and my British troops are 54 millimeter. So let me bring in one of my British guys. This is by Barzo, and this is a fine. I'm going to show you some more of these guys in another video, but let me sit this down so you can get a comparison between this one and that one, and you can see immediately the 60 millimeter guy is much larger. The British guy in the foreground looks like he is maybe 14-year-old boy or something, or 12-year-old. I don't know. Now, these troops done by Armies in Plastic, I think they were made in 2009. And those of you who have Armies in Plastic know that in the beginning, a lot of their sculpts were, I wouldn't say they were collector grade, they were just toys. And what they started making, I don't know if it was 2007, but it was in the later 2000s. These are 2009, I believe. Should say on the bottom, if it wouldn't blur out like that. Yeah, it's blurring out again. I need a new phone. I think these are marked 2009. And I do like all the poses with the exception of this one here. And if you've seen some of my previous videos, you know I can't stand this pose. Um, I've never seen anyone run like this, ever. So this pose I don't care for. Everything else I like. They have an NCO. My arm keeps sticking to the page over here because it's so hot. Oh my God, I'm sweating. My shirt is completely soaked. Iggy, we all knew you're all wet. Yeah, thanks for that. This is an NCO, and you can tell immediately because he's holding a halberd. They used to hold a pike or an axe or a halberd, or this one is a combination pike and axe, it looks like. Originally, troops would use these to unhorse cavalry. And the Swiss army was quite famous for having spears or pikes or whatever you want to call it. But by the late 1500s, the halberd was suddenly became more of a symbolic as opposed to an actual weapon of combat. It became a symbol, and the NCOs would. It's all bent. It needs a hot water treatment. Gosh, I wouldn't even have to boil water. It's so hot in here. I just dip it, and dip it good. What was I saying? Oh, the NCOs would use them to so that the troops could know where the NCO was. So it was more of a symbolic type of thing. I suppose you could use it to kill someone. I mean, you could use a rock to kill someone, so anything can be used to kill somebody, which is not a nice thought. Okay, here's the officer. I like this pose too, except for two things. The sword seems a little skinny for the size of the figure, and I don't think he would be holding the scabbard like that. It would have been attached to a sling, perhaps, or attached to a belt or something. But here they have him holding it with no strap, so I'm not quite sure unless he was using it as a cane. I don't know. But he's pretty good. And it shows here the long coat that they had in the mid 1700s with the long sleeves, turn ups. And he's got long leggings or gaiters on. Now, I showed you the drummer. That's my favorite pose of the group. This is a nice one too. I like this. He's got a tin canteen and a haversack. So all of his accoutrements appear to be there. And of course, he has the long ponytail with the black ribbon in the back. Did you guys ever see that movie, Barry Lyndon? That's a great movie. I mean, Stanley Kubrick filmed it in such a way that it almost looked like, I heard one critic say that it looked like postcards from 1700s Europe. It's a beautiful film. Uh, some of the characters are unsavory, but the film itself is quite beautiful. There is a battle in there between the Prussians and I guess the French. And it's more of a skirmish, but it's an excellent battle scene. You guys, if you don't watch the movie, at least see that because it's really well done. Also, in the beginning of the movie, it shows British troops parading in a field, being watched by admirers and things, and that's really nice too. So then we have a fella firing, and you'll notice that he has the bayonet, the socket bayonet, and also the sword combination. So they would have a sling, and it would have God, my arm keeps sticking. Uh, it has a combination of a bayonet and a short sword there. So all the figures I think are well done. Uh, but you know how I feel about that running guy. I don't know why I don't like that so much. I even like this guy. He's marching. If you've ever held a musket, you know that those things are pretty heavy. I think a Civil War musket is like 8 pounds or 9 pounds. I'm not sure exactly. So I imagine mid 1700s, the muskets must have been heavier. My ambition is to go to Quebec one day. And here's a map of the city. And I think this is the Plains of Abraham. But for some reason, I thought the Plains of Abraham were over here and the city over here. So I don't know why I thought that. But they climbed up the cliffs and they came in boats. And then the men found a path. Like it must have been a goat trail or something up the side of the cliff. And then they all assembled here. But the French came out and met them. And General Wolfe, what was his name? James Wolfe? Yeah. He was killed in the battle. First, he was shot in the hand, which must have not felt too good. And then he was shot, I think, in the chest. Uh, the Marquis Montcalm was also killed, and he was buried in the church in Quebec or Quebec. I don't know how you would want to say it. I always called it Quebec, but someone told me, "No, Monsieur, Quebec." And I'm like, "Oh, all right." Um, there was a crater inside the church because a mortar round, I guess, took out the roof and exploded on the church floor, so it created a crater, and they just dumped his body in there and buried him. So I wonder if it's still buried there. You know, you can see where Braddock was buried. If you go to Fort Necessity, there's a road that goes in front of along the front of the fort, and Braddock's army retreated along that road, and he bounced up and down on that dirt road for a couple days before he died. So he had a really agonizing death, and they buried him in the middle of the road, but then they later dug him up and reburied him. And they say that the reason they buried him in the middle of the road is because they didn't want the Indians to find him, because they would have desecrated his body. But if you're burying someone and digging him up and isn't that sort of desecrating? I don't know. Um, that's all I got for you this time, guys. I'm sorry I don't have my materials to share with you. Uh, it's been a few years since I read anything about the French and Indian War. It was a global conflict, though. It was fought in Europe, continental Europe. It was fought in India, the Caribbean, America. I think it might have even been fought in Africa. But it was all for colonial possessions. All right, but it's a war that really made Americans feel like Americans for the first time. So it was important for that. Okay, guys, that's all I got for you. So I'm going to sign off. I want to thank you for getting Iggy with it. And usually I say, well, let's go here, let's go there. Tell you the truth, my brain can't think of anything this time. Uh, why don't we go to Bob's Big Boy? Because that was the last place I ever saw my friend James. And James recently passed away. And James was a great guy. I often refer to him as a Renaissance man. He had an encyclopedic knowledge of almost everything. He was an amazing guy, amazing musician and entertainer, very funny man, very curious and mischievous. And I'm glad that I got to see him there. The last time I spoke to him on the phone, he got angry at me because I talked about who I was going to vote for, and that kind of made him angry. And then he thought that I was angry at him because I wasn't answering my phone. Well, I wasn't answering my phone because my phone is broken. I don't know, guys. Don't let politics wreck your friendships. I don't think my friendship with James was wrecked, but I don't want to think about that. I want to remember James as being the wonderful friend that he was. And I'm going to miss him.